Hello, my beloved YouTube people. Um, so it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got like 2 hours of sleep last night because the baby's been super, super fussy. She's been having a really hard time with her belly. I'm starting to really, really worry that I passed my Crohn's onto her because I was born with it, and I'm afraid she was too. And it could just be paranoia, but her stomach does a lot of shit mine did when I was a baby, and it's starting to kind of freak me out. But she's asleep right now, and her dad is asleep right now. And because I've been up so long and I'm an insomniac, my brain is like, hey, I'm gonna go into fucking overdrive. Good luck sleeping tonight. So, yeah, I should be downstairs cleaning the house. There are like 100 more important things I should be doing or whatever. But tonight I'm just kind of sick of being like responsible. So, I'm gonna take a night off from that, and I'm gonna do book reviews. Yeah, I want to feel like people for a minute, so bear with me. This book, How to Be a Woman, here, I'm trying to get a good, clear fucking shot of it, by Moran. It is the fucking quintessential 21st century feminist fucking book. Like, okay, I'm a feminist. Of course I am. I'm a female. I like having the same rights as, anybody with a penis. But there are a lot of feminists that I have a major fucking problem with because they seem to think that being a feminist entitles them to tell women what kind of women they're allowed to be. And to me, that's no fucking different than a man telling a woman who she should be. In fact, it's a little bit worse. I'm just saying. So I don't really read feminist literature and stuff like that generally, but I got turned on to Caitlin Moran through Amanda fucking Palmer. Gotta love her. And I could tell right off the bat she was not that kind of feminist at all. So I watched a couple of interviews and shit like that with her, and I really dug her. So I checked out her book at the library, and it was fucking amazing. Like, you all need to read it. Male, female, doesn't matter. It is so good that I swear to God, when River gets older, I'm going to buy this book so that I can hand it to her when, like, puberty starts and shit like that, to make questions and, like, the conversation between us about that kind of stuff a little easier, because she can just refer to the book and be like, okay, I have a question about this, instead of being like, periods fucking suck, let's talk about that. Because, when you're an adolescent, it's kind of... Anyway, this book has everything. This book talks about extreme poverty, which, it's not often that I mean, there are definitely famous people out there that grew up poor. And frankly, I collect their stories, and I save them in a little jar in my heart to give me hope. And I have since I was a little girl. A lot of my favorite celebrities came from absolutely nothing. But it was really cool to pick up this book and read her stories about living in the English equivalent of HUD housing, because I grew up in HUD housing. I grew up on welfare, all that kind of thing. And, to hear her talk about, like, how there were so many of them and they didn't really have enough food and shit like that, so they would, like, fight over it, and her favorite food was a block of cheese. Like, there wasn't that many of us. There were only 3 of us kids, but we had nothing, and a lot of times you could catch me in a corner eating a fucking block of cheese if I had it. It was just, it was cool. I don't know. I dug it. But it talks about that kind of stuff. It talks about puberty. It talks about, being awkward and being not the quintessential tiny, pretty girl in high school and what that's like, which when I was like 15, 16 years old, I weighed 230 pounds. Like, I was a big girl. I was never the quintessential beauty. However, I left school when I would have been starting the 8th grade, so I was 13. So, and I always had older friends, and I don't know, it was a real self-esteem booster. I didn't feel bad about myself around them. In fact, because I didn't want to date anybody, I was the most sought-after person in my circle of friends. It's the whole fucking chase thing. But, I've always been the kind of person that when I was younger, I knew I was pretty, but it didn't matter to me. But I also, when I was a kid, went through the lack of self-esteem because I was heavy and because, you know, it was pointed out on a fucking daily, and it makes you feel not great about yourself. And she talks about that. She talks about, you know, falling in love with a fucking asshole, falling in love with the right guy, getting married, having kids, you know, going through a fucking horrendous labor. Like, her labor made my labor look smooth sailing, I'm here to tell you. Like, she goes into detail about everything you could possibly imagine pertaining to being a woman. And she does it with such humor that, you know, you're laughing all the way through it, even as she's talking about very serious issues. And she has even said that that has been her tactic. That's how she gets people to listen to her, because if you approach people in an angry fashion, you're going to get an angry response. But if you open up a conversation with humor, you're going to get people to listen to you. And she does that perfectly. I can't remember the whole percentage thing when it comes to copyright, so I'm going to read y'all some of this book, and if I read you too much and somewhere down the line Caitlin Moran somehow fucking sees it or whatever and it's too much, I'm sorry, just don't sue me, just let me know and I'll take it down. But there were some really cool passages in here. I bookmarked them with toilet paper because that's where I'm at in life right now. Shit. Hold on 1 minute. Here it is. This is in the, let me see what number the chapter is. The chapter is called I Am a Feminist. It's chapter 4. I Am a Feminist, page 75. But of course you might be asking yourself, am I a feminist? I might not be. I don't know. I still don't know what it is. I'm too knackered and confused to work it out. That curtain rod really isn't up. I don't have time to work out if I am a women's libber. There seems to be a lot to it. What does it mean? I understand, so here's the quick way of working out if you're a feminist. Put your hand in your underpants. Do you have a vagina? And do you want to be in charge of it? If you said yes to both, then congratulations, you're a feminist. Because we need to reclaim the word feminism. We need the word feminism back real bad. When statistics come in saying that only 29% of American women would describe themselves as feminist and only 42% of British women, I used to think, what do you think feminism is, ladies? What part of liberation for women is not for you? Is it freedom to vote? The right not to be owned by the man you marry? The campaign for equal pay? Vogue by Madonna? Jeans? Did all that good shit get on your nerves? Or were you just drunk at the time of the survey? These days, however, I am much calmer since I realize that it's technically impossible for a woman to argue against feminism. Without feminism, you wouldn't be allowed to have a debate on a woman's place in society. You'd be too busy giving birth on the kitchen floor, biting down on a wooden spoon so as not to disturb the men's card game, before going back to hoeing the rutabaga field. This is why those feminist columnists in the Daily Mail giving daily wail against feminism amuse me. They paid you I'm sorry, y'all. Remember, I'm sleep deprived. £1,600 for that, dear, and I bet it's going into your bank account and not your husband's. The more women argue, loudly, against feminism, the more they both prove it exists and that they enjoy its hard-won privileges. Personally, I don't think the word feminists on its own is enough. I want to go all the way. I want to bring it back in conjunction with the word strident. It looks hotter like that. It's been so wrong for so long that it's back to being right again. They have used it to abuse us. Let's use it right back at them. I want to reclaim the phrase strident feminist in the same way the hip-hop community has reclaimed the N-word. I am not fixing to fucking say that word. No. Sorry, there were parts, and, we need the only word we have ever had to describe making the world equal for men and women. Women's reluctance to use it sends out a really bad signal. Imagine if, in the 1960s, it had become fashionable for black people to say they weren't into civil rights. No, I'm not into civil rights. That Martin Luther King is too shouty. He just needs to chill out, to be honest. But then, I do understand why women started to reject the word feminism. It ended up being invoked in so many baffling, inappropriate contexts that, if you weren't actually aware of the core aims of feminism and were trying to work it out simply from the surrounding conversation, you'd presume it was some spectacularly unappealing combination of misandry, misery, and hypocrisy, which stood for ugly clothes, constant anger, and let's face it, no fucking. So there's that. There's a whole generation of people who've confused feminism with anything to do with women. Feminism is seen as absolutely interchangeable with modern women. On one hand, a cheering reminder of what feminism has done, but on the other, a political, lexical, and grammatical mess. Over the last few years, I've seen feminism, to remind ourselves the liberation of women, blamed for the following: eating disorders, female depression, rising divorce rates, childhood obesity, male depression, women leaving it too late to conceive, the rise in abortion, female binge drinking, and rises in female crime. But these are all things that have simply involved women and have nothing to do with the political movement feminism. Oh man, I didn't want to read all of this. I'm sorry, guys. I promise, though, you're all going to go out and get this book and you're going to be glad I did. In the most ironic twist of all, feminism is often used as the stick. Actually, a stick is inappropriately phallocentric, maybe a furry cup, to stop women behaving as freely, normally, and unself-consciously as men. Even, in some extreme cases, suggesting that acting as freely, normally, and unself-consciously as men is destroying other women, like with bitching. There's currently this idea that feminists aren't supposed to bitch about each other. That's not very feminist of you, people will say if I slag off another woman. What about the sisterhood? People cry when Julie Burchill lays into Camille Paglia, or Germaine Greer has a pop at Suzanne Moore. Well, personally, I believe that feminism will get you so far, and then you have to start bitching. When did feminism become confused with Buddhism? Why on earth have I, because I'm a woman, got to be nice to everyone? And why have women, on top of everything else, got to be particularly careful to be lovely and supportive to each other at all times? This idea of the sisterhood I find frankly illogical. I don't build in a 20% genital similarity regard bonus if I meet someone else wearing a bra. If someone's an arsehole, someone's an arsehole, regardless of whether we're both standing in the longer bathroom queue at concerts or not. When people suggest that what all along has been holding women back is other women bitching about each other, I think they're severely overestimating the power of a catty zinger during the cigarette break. We have to remember that snidely saying her hair's a bit limp on top isn't what's keeping womankind from closing the 30% pay gap and a place on the board of directors. I think that's more likely to be down to tens of thousands of years of ingrained social, political, and economic misogyny and the patriarchy, to be honest. That's just got slightly more leverage than a gag about someone's bad trousers. I have a rule of thumb that allows me to judge, when time is pressing and one needs to make a snap judgment, whether some sexist bullshit is afoot. Obviously, it's not 100% infallible, but by and large, it definitely points you in the right direction. And it's asking this question: are the men doing it? Are the men worrying about this as well? Is this taking up the men's time? Are the men told not to do this as it's letting our side down? Are the men having to write bloody books about this exasperating, retarded, time-wasting bullshit? Is this making Jon Stewart feel insecure? Almost always the answer is no. The boys are not being told they have to be a certain way. They're just getting on with stuff. Men are not being informed that they are oppressing other men with their comments. It is presumed the men can handle perfectly well the idea of other men bitching about them. I think on this basis we can presume women can cope with other women being bitchy about them too, because we are essentially the same as men when it comes to being vile about each other. This isn't to say we should all start behaving like bitches toward each other and turn every day into a 24-hour roasting session in which people's lives, wardrobes, and psyches are destroyed before our eyes. All along, we must recall the most important humanity guideline of all: be polite. Being polite is possibly the greatest daily contribution everyone can make to life on Earth. So, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. That covers my beef with a lot of feminists. The idea that you have to be this certain way to be a feminist. Like, probably the most prominent one that always got on my fucking nerves was that, you couldn't wear makeup, wear a bra, dress sexy, whatever, because you were just doing it for men and that made you not a feminist. Bull fucking shit. For one, when I put my face on, I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it because I want to look like a fierce bitch. And, my old man see me without makeup, with makeup. He's seen me give birth, for Christ's sake. He does not give a fuck if I have makeup on. I care. It matters to moi. And as for bras, I mean, I have a fucking C and a B minus. A bra is my best friend. Catelyn Moran understands that. She had children, and apparently her boobies fell. See, I never had good boobies. My boobies were always kind of fucked. So, I always needed really good bras. Apparently she does too. She ain't burning that bitch. Either am I. Another problem I always had with feminists was this idea that pornography in and of itself was terrible for women. That's bullshit. I mean, I'm sorry, it's bullshit. Now, the way that porn is done today, in a lot of cases, yeah, it's not great for feminism. But if you had porn that was done between two consensual people that just wanted to fuck, that were like really, really hot for each other, how is that hurting feminism? You're doing what you would do for free, but you're getting paid for it. It's fucking genius. Anyway, here is the other thing that I wanted to read to you guys. And it's a short chapter, and I want to read the entire chapter to you because I think the message of it is super important. It is chapter 15, abortion. I have cold chills like a motherfucker, so if you see the computer or me shaking, it's part of that whole anemia thing. Anyway, chapter 15, abortion. I think I have polycystic ovaries. That's what I'm getting the ultrasound for. I've been to my general practitioner 3 times with symptoms: acne, exhaustion, weight gain, disrupted menstrual cycle, and this is where they've referred me, the ultrasound unit at the Whittington Hospital. Yes, with those symptoms you think I'm pregnant, don't you? But I did a test 6 weeks ago and got nothing, and this is where my GP has sent me now. I'm eating 2 cans of tinned pineapple for breakfast and cry when I see a sad squirrel in an ad. Of course I'm pregnant. But the test said no, and I'm still breastfeeding, and I don't want to be pregnant, so I'm not. I lie on the bed, the monitor is up on the wall, waiting to show me what's inside. I don't really know what polycystic ovaries look like, but I'm guessing I'll see circles, like oxygen bubbles, or maybe something more visceral, clusters, bracts. As the nurse washes her hands in preparation, the ultrasound screen looks like the view from the deck of the Millennium Falcon when it's parked. Dark, black space with occasional speckles of light. Still. When they finally put the ultrasound to my belly, though, it's like the light jump. The whole solar system roars into life. Lines and whorls and kidneys and guts. Moons with asteroids circling. And then, at the center, low, deep, hidden, a pulsar. A signal, a clock that's ticking. That is a heartbeat. You're pregnant, the nurse says cheerfully. Nurses must be told to always say this cheerfully. They always do, however pale the client is or however loudly the client has just said fuck and started shaking. She is doing calculations with an on-screen tape measure. I would say you're around 11 weeks, she says, pushing the ultrasound monitor into my belly. That really is it. There is nothing else that looks like a fetus. The curve of the spine like an etiolated crescent moon. I may have mispronounced that word. I don't think I've ever seen that one before. The astronaut helmet skull, the black unblinking eyes like a prawn. Oh my God, I say to the baby. Oh, you outrageous thing. I am sure he is my gay son, the one I always wanted. His entrance is so showy, so jazz hands, so ta-da, so sudden, so camp. An absolute blackout on pre-publicity until he can make his first appearance like this on TV like it's fucking Oprah or something. And his luck. This kid is clearly lucky. We only had an unprotected fuck, that night in Cyprus, and the 20 minutes both girls were asleep. This kid is going to buck odds all his life. He'll break casinos and befriend millionaires in the deli queue. He'll find gold on the first time he pans the stream and true love on the very day he decides he needs to settle down. I can't have you, I tell him sadly. The world will fall in if I have you. But not even for a second do I think I should have this baby. I have no dilemma, no terrible decision to make, because I know with calm certainty that I don't want another child now. In the same way, I know absolutely that I don't want to go to India or be blonde or fire a gun. This isn't who I'm going to be again. Another 3 years of being life support to someone who weeps for me and rages against me, and who knows when he's ill can only be relieved by resting his head on my belly and dreaming he's back inside. My 2 girls whom I walk backward in front of, looking like I'm bowing down to them, keeping the wind off them, watching everything they do like a jealous camera, are all I want. I used to fear their death, the car, the dog, the sea, the germ, until I realized it need never be a problem. On the trolley, on the way to the mortuary, I would put my hands into their ribs and take their hearts and swallow them, and give birth to them again so they would never ever end. I'll do anything for those girls. but I will only do one thing for this baby, as quickly as I can, before it goes any further. I thank the nurse, wipe the jelly from my stomach, and go outside to make a call. In 2007, Guardian columnist Zoe Williams wrote a wholly clear-headed and admirable piece examining why women always felt compelled to preface discussion about their abortions with an obligatory, "Of course it's terribly traumatic, no woman enters into this lightly." She went on to explain that this is because, however liberal a society is, it assumes that at its absolute core abortion is wrong, but that a forgiving state must make legal and medical provision for it, lest desperate women do a Vera Drake down a back alley and make things even worse. Abortions are never seen as a positive thing, as any other operation to remedy a potentially life-ruining condition would. Women never speak publicly about their abortions with happy, relieved gratitude. There are no "good luck with your morning after pill" cards. People don't make jokes about it, despite the fact that all the truest jokes are about vexing topics and cover every other subject, including cancer, God, and death. Additionally, there is the spectrum of wrongness to consider. There are good abortions and bad abortions, like Chris Morris's sketch on Brass Eye where he discusses good AIDS and bad AIDS. Hemophiliacs who caught the virus from blood transfusions have good AIDS and deserve sympathy. Homosexuals who picked up the virus from casual sex, however, have bad AIDS and are accorded no solicitude at all. A raped teenage girl seeking an abortion, or a mother whose life is endangered by the pregnancy, is having a good abortion. She still won't discuss it publicly or expect her friends to be happy for her, but these women get away with barely any stigmatism. Ha! Not in America. Just saying. At the other end of the spectrum, of course, are the worst kind of abortions. Repeated abortions, late-term abortions, abortions after IVF, and worst of all, mothers who have abortions. Our view of motherhood is still so idolized and misty. Mother, gentle giver of life, that the thought of a mother subsequently setting limits on her capacity to nurture and refusing to give further life seems obscene. For mothers must pretend that they are loving and protective of all life, however nascent, I think that's another word I've never heard, or putative it might be. They should, we still quietly believe deep down inside, be prepared to give and give and give until they simply wear out. The greatest mother, the perfect mother, would carry to term every child she conceived, no matter how disruptive or ruinous, because her love would be great enough for anything and everyone. Women who decide to continue with pregnancies that endanger their lives, "Doctors told me another pregnancy would kill me, but here's baby William," are written about in magazine features as admirable, the ultimate mothers. They are the truest embodiment of oxytocin, the pregnancy hormone of love and bonding that keeps the world full. Women should be, essentially, capable of endless, self-sacrificial love. I have problems with that assumption. For one thing, I believe something very elemental and, in the theological sense, non-Christian. One of the big dilemmas over abortion is trying to work out when life begins with the fetus, concluding that if abortion could occur before life begins, that would be a right kind of abortion. But given that both science and philosophy continue to struggle to define what the beginning of life is, wouldn't it be better to come at the debate from a different angle entirely? For if a pregnant woman has dominion over life, why should she not also have dominion over not life? This is a concept understood by other cultures. The Hindu goddess Kali is both mother of the whole universe and devourer of all things. She is life and death. In Sumeria, Inanna is the goddess of sex and fertility, but she also turns into Ereshkigal, goddess of the underworld. On a very elemental level, if women are, by biology, commanded to host, shelter, nurture, and protect life, why should they not be empowered to end life too? I'm not advocating stoving in the heads of children or encouraging late abortions, but then no one is. What I am vexed with is the idea that by having an abortion, a woman is somehow being unfemale and indeed unmotherly. That the absolute essence of womanhood and maternity is to sustain life at all costs, whatever the situation. My belief in the ultimate sociological, emotional, and practical necessity for abortion became even stronger after I had my 2 children. It is only after you have had a 9-month pregnancy, labored to get the child out, fed it, cared for it, sat with it until 3 a.m., risen with it at 6 a.m., swooned with love for it, and been reduced to furious tears by it, that you really understand just how important it is for a child to be wanted. How motherhood is a game you must enter with as much energy, willingness, and happiness as possible. And the most important thing of all, of course, is to be wanted, desired, and cared for by a reasonably sane, stable mother. I can honestly say that my abortion was one of the least difficult decisions of my life. I'm not being flippant when I say it took me longer to decide what countertops to have in the kitchen than whether I was prepared to spend the rest of my life being responsible for a further human being, because I knew that to do it again, to commit my life to another person, might very possibly stretch my abilities and conception of who I am, and who I want to be, and what I want and need to do, to breaking point. The idea that I might not, in an earlier era or a different country, have a choice in the matter seems both emotionally and physically barbaric. As Germaine Greer puts it in The Whole Woman, to become a mother without wanting it is to live like a slave or domestic animal. Of course, there was every chance that I might eventually be thankful. I'm sorry, guys, my fucking back is killing me. You guys are like, dude, you're reading a fucking novel and you're moving. I'm sorry. Of course, there was every chance that I might eventually be thankful for the arrival of a third child. He might have arrived and forced me to discover new reserves of energy, dedication, and love. She might have been the best thing that ever happened to me, but I am personally not a gambler. I won't spend $1 on the lottery, let alone take a punt on a pregnancy. The stakes are far, far too high. I can't agree with a society that would force me to bet on how much I could love under duress. I cannot understand anti-abortion arguments that center on the sanctity of life. As a species, we fairly comprehensively demonstrated that we don't believe in the sanctity of life. The shrugging acceptance of war, famine, epidemic, pain, and lifelong grinding poverty show us that whatever we tell ourselves, we've made only the most feeble of efforts to really treat human life as sacred. I don't understand then why, in the midst of all this, pregnant women, women trying to make rational decisions about their futures, and usually those of their families too, should be subject to more pressure about preserving life than, say, Vladimir Putin, the World Bank, or the Catholic Church. However, what I do believe to be genuinely sacred, and indeed more useful to the earth as a whole, is trying to ensure that there are as few unbalanced, destructive people as possible. By whatever rationale you use, ending a pregnancy 12 weeks into gestation is incalculably more moral than bringing an unwanted child into the world. That is, oh my god, so fucking important, and I wish people would get that in their heads. It's those unhappy, unwanted children who then grow into angry adults who have caused the great majority of humankind's miseries. They are the ones who make housing projects feel feral, streets dangerous, relationships violent. If psychoanalysis has, somewhat brutally, laid the responsibility for psychological disorders at parents' doors, the least we can do is to tip our hats to women aware enough not to create those troubled people in the first place. But of course we don't. In the last 2 years, 3 bills have been tabled in the Commons seeking to curtail women's access to termination. Only 3, isn't England fucking lucky? I'm just saying. We have more than that just in one state. We also have a woman sitting in prison right now for life for a miscarriage in Indiana, but we don't fucking talk about that. Anyway, the Times reported that unprecedented numbers of doctors are opting out of terminations, dismayed by the increase in operations. A great deal of the reason why anti-abortion sentiment is allowed to hold ground is that the debate is just that, an ideological, religious, or socio-political debate on abortion. It is rarely discussed in terms of personal experience, despite record numbers of women, 189,100 in the UK in 2009, having them. Every year, an estimated 42 million abortions occur worldwide, 20 million occurring safely with proper medical supervision, and 22 million occurring unsafely. Across the world, women are doing what they always have done throughout history, dealing with a potentially life-altering or life-threatening crisis and then not talking about it afterward. In case anyone near to them, those people who are not bleeding, who have not just had an abortion, get upset. Women, always loath to talk about the more visceral elements of female reproductive physicality, I'm sorry guys, I'm fucking half asleep, are too ashamed or unconfident in their reception to discuss their terminations even with friends or partners. This brings about the curious situation in which, while pretty much everyone must have someone dear to them who's had an abortion, the chances of them actually discussing it with their more conservative elders or menfolk are remote. Consequently, we have a climate where anti-abortionists can discuss abortion as something that they do over there, rather than the reality that it has, in all likelihood, been a calm, rational, well-thought-out act which has statistically occurred very close to home. When I wrote about my decision to have an abortion in the Times, I was amazed at the reader response. More than 400 online comments and over 100 letters and emails. By a rule of thumb, those who are anti-abortion cited no experience of pregnancy or abortion, while those who were pro-abortion did. The reason that I found most surprising, however, was the response that I found most surprising, was a wonderful letter from a well-known feminist columnist who said that, although she had written about abortion many, many times, she had never mentioned her own terminations. I always feared what would happen if I did. I presumed no one would forgive me. I thought it would somehow invalidate my argument. And as a woman reconciled in her own body, I feel I can argue with anyone's God about my right to end a pregnancy. My first conception, wanted so badly, ended in miscarriage 3 days before my wedding. A kind nurse removed my wedding manicure with nail polish remover in order to fit a finger thermometer for the subsequent D&C operation. I wept as I went into the operating theater and wept as I came out. In that instance, my body had decided that the baby was not to be and had ended it. This time, it is my mind that has decided that this baby was not to be. I don't believe one's decision is more valid than the other. They both know me. They're both equally capable of deciding what is right. I want to end the pregnancy as quickly as possible and go straight to see the consultant I had for my last birth. During an awkward 5-minute consultation, he has to point out to me that the hospital we are in, St. John and St. Elizabeth's in St. John's Wood, is a Catholic hospital, and I have just in effect asked the Pope for an abortion. Back home, the world's least fun Google search suggests a consult in Golders Green, followed by a procedure out in Essex. There are 2 viable options for the abortion itself. I can either be knocked out and wake up to find it all over, but then spend the night in the hospital, or I can stay conscious but go home the same day. I'm still breastfeeding my youngest, so staying conscious then going home it is. There is the third option, the medical abortion, where you take 2 pills and then miscarry at home, but asking around anyone who's experienced it says it tends to freak you out quite a lot. You just walk around your house bleeding for days, and there's a chance it won't work, and then you end up having to have a D&C anyway. Just go in and get it over and done with. The clinic we go to is out in Essex, in an area that has, damn it, all the hell, this page is not turning, that has the light suburban air of wife-swapping and neat brothels run by bosomy women. I suppose, given its air of offering harbor to humanity's shameful physical needs, this is the right place for an abortion clinic. Inside, it reminds me of a Victorian youth hostel, the atmosphere of the clients being up to no good, and the staff watching them quietly from the landing above, pursed mouth and disapproving. In the waiting room there are 4 couples and 2 women on their own. The younger woman is from Ireland. She arrived here this morning, and apparently, I gather from what she is whispering to the receptionist, will go back on the ferry tonight. The older woman looks in her late 40s, maybe even early 50s. She cries without making a sound. She has the air of a woman who hasn't told a soul and never will. The couples are silent too. All possible conversations have been had before you get here. My husband is red-eyed but solid, just as he was through 2 births and a miscarriage. He made his definitive statement in all this years ago. It seems wildly unfair that for us to reproduce, you have to go through all this shit. In the peerlessly unromantic conversation we had when I phoned him from outside the ultrasound clinic, there wasn't even a debate. He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "No," and he said, "Yeah." We knew how we both felt. God, we'd lain in bed the week before, after spending the day with friends and their newborn, going, "She's got that 1,000-yard stare and he looks half dead." You forget how much attention they need, don't you? How you're just stuck. The nurse calls my name, and I leave his hand to go on to the room. As I walk, I levitate up, up, up into a panic attack, and in a telescopic rush, I know, coldly know, that I am making a terrible mistake, and that I must keep this baby no matter what. But I also know panic attacks, and I know they lie. Every single other thought you have had has brought you here, unfailingly here. I tell myself, this isn't a last-minute revelation, this is just fear. Tell it to stop. I don't know what I thought abortion would be like. When I had a D&C after my miscarriage, they knocked me out, weeping, and I woke up weeping, with it all over. "Where's the baby?" I kept saying, off my face, as they wheeled me into a room and told me as gently as possible to shut up. The only real knowledge I had of that procedure was the after effects, sore, obviously, and aware of the pregnancy hormones leaving me hour by hour, taking away the estrogen floatiness and making me feel heavy, my proper gravity, again, like when you stay in a bath reading as the water drains away. This time I'm awake for all of it. The whole thing is a bad surprise. I suppose I thought the one thing it would be was clinical, doctors just doing their job coldly and quickly, procedure precise and fast. But as I lay on the bed, the last appointment of the day, the doctors had the air of people who have spent far too long doing unpleasant things in order to rectify the mistakes of others. You wanted to become a doctor to help people and feel better at the end of your job, I think, watching them as the nurse takes my hand. But I don't think you do feel better at the end of the day. You look like humans have constantly disappointed you. The abortion itself is not what I had expected, in that it is both painful and seems fairly crude. The cervix is opened manually with some manner of ratchet. Then a speculum is inserted, and they start to perform the abortion, which appears to be just smashing stuff up with a spoon. It's wincingly violent. Like breaking the yolk of an egg with a chopstick, I think, doing the breathing I learned for labor, which is, of course, a very bad joke. It's quite painful, like labor 5 hours in. The painkiller has been absolutely useless, but complaining about pain, given what you're doing, seems inappropriate. Even if you yourself don't believe you should experience pain while having an abortion, there's a distinct atmosphere that the staff here do. You're doing fine, the nurse says, holding my hand very hard. She is kind, but she is also, obviously, already putting her coat on and thinking about getting out the door. She can smell the weekend from here. She is already far away. The doctor then uses a vacuette? Correct me if I mispronounce that, please. To hoover my womb out, which is pretty much exactly as you'd imagine having the contents of your womb vacuumed out to feel like. And the months after, it makes me repeatedly demur from the purchase of a Black & Decker dustbuster. The whole process has taken maybe 7 minutes. It is brisk, but the longing for every instrument and hand to retreat from you and allow you to quietly knit back together to heal is immense. You want everyone to get out of you. Everyone. The doctor turns the vacuum off. He then turns it on again and does one last little bit, like when you're doing the front room finish, and then decide to give the sofa cushions a once-over while you're at it. Finally he's done, and I let out an involuntary ah as his hands withdraw. See, he says with a firm smile, not too bad, all done. Then he looks down into the dish, which holds everything that was inside me. Intrigued by something, he calls his colleague over from the slice? Look at that, he says, pointing. Huh, unusual, the other says. They both laugh before the dish is carried away, and the gloves are peeled off, and the cleaning up starts. The day is now done. I don't want to ask what it is that they've seen. Maybe they could detect he was gay, even at this early stage. The best thought is perhaps she's hideously deformed, and I would have miscarried her anyway. The worst thought is perhaps something was struggling to stay alive. Perhaps he's running out his last piece of luck as I lie here, feeling pale as paper on the outside, and red and black on the inside, like bad meat. That's the worst bit, the very worst bit. I wish these doctors would shut up. When they take you into the next room, the recovery room, you lie wrapped in a terry cloth robe on a reclining chair. They give you a magazine and a cold drink. There is a potted palm tree in the corner. It looks like the worst ever remake of Wham's Club Tropicana video. The girl from Ireland leaves after 5 minutes. She has to catch her bus, to catch her coach, to catch her ferry back home. She walks sore. It's blatantly obvious that she shouldn't have had to come to another country to get her life back on track. I wonder if the judges in Ireland have ever seen a woman as pale as this, counting out 50s onto the reception desk, in a country where she doesn't know a soul, and then bleeding all the way from Essex to Holyhead. I wonder if her father approves of the law because he doesn't think it applies to her, and whether he would hate that law if he knew it did, and has brought her here. The older woman, who is crying silently in the waiting room, is here now, still crying. We all seem to have agreed at some point to pretend that we're not here, so no one catches her eye. We just read the magazines until the 40 minutes of recovery time is up, and the nurse says, you can go. Damn it, hold on. Sorry, guys. Okay, chapter's almost over, by the way. And we drive away, with my husband driving dangerously because he's holding my hand very, very tight, and I say, I'm going to get the contraceptive version of Berlin Wall fitted, I think. And he says, yeah, and holds my hand even tighter, and that is the end of that day. Given the subject matter, it seems odd to say that this is the happy ending, but it is. All accounts of abortion that I have seen always had, as Dolores coda, how the procedure left a mark. However female sympathetic the publication, there is always a need to mention how the anniversary of the abortion is always remembered with sorrow, the baby's due date marked with a sudden flood of tears. The narrative is that while a woman may tell herself rationally that she shouldn't have that baby, there will be a part of her that does not believe this, which carries on silently marking the baby that should have come. Women's bodies do not give up their babies so easily and so silently, is the message. The heart will always remember. This is what I expect. This is not how it is. Indeed, it's the opposite. I keep waiting for my prescribed grief and guilt to come. I am braced, chest out, ready, but it never arrives. I don't cry when I see baby clothes. Friends announcing pregnancies don't make me jealous or quietly blue. I do not have to remind myself that sometimes you must do the wrong thing for the right reason. In fact, it's the opposite. Every time I sleep through the night, I am thankful for the choice I made. When the youngest graduates out of diapers, I'm relieved there isn't a third one following behind. When friends come round with their new babies, I am hugely, hugely grateful that I had the option not to do this again. And that the option didn't involve me lying on a friend's kitchen table after the kids had gone to sleep, praying I wouldn't get an infection or hemorrhage to death before I got home. I talked to other friends about this after a few drinks, and they agree. I walked past playgrounds thinking if I'd gone through with the pregnancy, I'd still be sitting on that bench, fat, depressed, knackered, and just waiting for my life to start again, Lizzie says. Rachel is, as always, brisker. It's one of the top 4 best things I ever did after marrying my husband, having my son, and getting a fixed quote on the loft conversion. I suppose what I've been given to believe is that my body, or my subconscious, would be angry with me for not having the baby, and that additionally their opinion on the matter would, in some way, be superior, more natural, more moral to the rational decision my conscious mind had made. That women were made to have babies, and that each one that is not brought to fruition must be accounted and mourned and repented for, and would remain unforgiven forever. But all I could see, and all I can see now years later, is history made of millions of women trying to undo the mistake that could then undo them, and then just carrying on, quiet, thankful, and silent about the whole thing. What I see is that it can be an action with only good consequences. This could possibly be the most important fucking chapter of any fucking book I've ever read in my life. This needs to be recited and repeated over and over and over again, because this nails it. For one thing, here in America, we have a constitutional right to an abortion regardless of why we want it, fucking period. Why all these laws are allowed to go on, I don't understand. I don't know what the Supreme Court is doing. Hold on a second. I have a cigarette. Damn it, it's all the way over there. I don't know what the fuck the Supreme Court is doing that this shit is still going on 6 years later, but it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, there's no question that these laws that interfere with abortion, that are trying to outlaw abortion, is against the constitutional right which grants us the right to abortion. There is no right to put restrictions on it as far as when you can get one. That's bullshit. It needs to stop. And any woman who does not want to have her child should not have to have her child. Because take it from me, somebody who was not wanted, it's not a fun fucking childhood. It's not a way for anybody to grow up. I beat all the statistics, for the most part. A lot of kids that would have grown up the way that I grew up would be on drugs by now, would probably be on their 5th kid that they didn't fucking want. And I know this because every kid I grew up with grew up like that. We were not wanted, we were poor, our families couldn't take care of us, our parents made it known on a daily basis that they made a mistake having us. Like, that is how we grew up. We grew up in poverty, most of them are still poor. I mean, I'm poor, but like, I don't know, I'm not that poor, and I was able to wait until I was almost 30 to have a child, which financially everything fell apart as soon as she was born, but we're trying. But I'm not poor because, like, I'm on drugs and having babies and all that, which is what a lot of them did. They repeated the same cycles. They had babies that they, didn't necessarily want because they thought it was the right thing. They couldn't support the babies. They're now sitting there completely without any options as far as they are concerned. High with all these kids they don't want. Like, a child that is not wanted should not be brought into the world, period. It does nobody any fucking good. A child that cannot, a woman knows she cannot take care of that child. The most responsible thing she could do for herself and for society and for that child is to have an abortion. I don't want to hear adoption. If a woman is able to carry a baby for 9 months and give it to somebody else, goddess bless her, she is stronger than me. I could not fucking do that, and I think that there are millions of women out there that could not do that. And for people like us, abortion is the answer. Now, I have never had an abortion, but that's because I've never been in a situation where I needed one. If I ever needed one, you bet your bottom dollar I'd fucking get one. I'm just saying. Between you, me, and the fly on the wall, I had a miscarriage at 13 years old. First time I had ever had sex, and I was protected. I don't know how the fuck it happened. But I had a miscarriage. If I would not have had a miscarriage, you bet your ass I would have had an abortion. There's no way I would have had a kid at 13 years old. Wouldn't have happened. Ever. There would not have been a second fucking thought about it. And I would have had no guilt over it. I don't understand. I do understand, because it has nothing to do with the fetuses inside a woman. First of all, the argument that, especially when it comes to whether or not to save the woman's life over the baby's, the argument that, oh, this is a life, so is the fucking woman carrying that baby. Like, are you serious? Are you really going to sit there and say that this tiny unformed fetus that cannot survive without the nutrients of its mother is more alive than the woman carrying it? What the fuck, dude? That is what we are worth to a lot of people in our society, and we sit there and we take it. Why? I didn't really mean for this to end up an abortion rant, but it's kind of fucking important. You know, just saying. I heard somewhere through the grapevine, and I'm not sure if it's true. I have not gotten a chance to look it up yet, so if it's not, let me know in the comments if you know more about it than me. That apparently, I believe it was North Carolina, the same dumb fucks that did the transgender bathroom shit. Fucking idiots. But anyway, oh my god. I believe it was them that just tried to pass a bill, or did pass a bill, saying that a woman has to carry an unviable fetus. That is unconstitutional. There is no fucking 2 cents about it. There needs to be some fast highway for the shit that is blatantly going against the Constitution, so that the Supreme Court can look at this for 5 fucking minutes and go, gee, this part right here in the Constitution says a woman is entitled to an abortion no matter what. This is obviously unconstitutional. Like, this is not rocket science. A 10-year-old could figure this out. But anyway, I mean, whether you are fucking pro-choice or anti-choice, you have to admit that an unwanted child wandering around in the world with a mother who cannot support it, a mother who feels guilty, probably turns to drugs because she had this child she didn't want. She's carrying this guilt because she didn't want the kid. She doesn't bond with the kid. She doesn't particularly like the kid. She doesn't do very much for the kid. Like, she does the basics so that the kid survives, blah, blah, blah. But there's never that bond. It doesn't fucking happen. It isn't like this woman spends 9 months not wanting that child, and as soon as it's born, oh my god, she wants it. I'm telling you guys, it doesn't fucking happen like that. I am here to tell you. It does nobody any good. Abortion needs to remain legal, it needs to remain safe, and these bullshit restrictions being put on it by fucking white Christian men needs to stop. Like, ASAP. The woman sitting in prison right now for life for a miscarriage, and I believe it was Indiana, needs to be let out, and the state needs to fucking pay her for the time that she wasted in prison over this bullshit. This needs to stop, period. And we need to stop taking it. And the reason that I think that a chapter is so important is because it tells it straight up. It doesn't sugarcoat how the procedure is done, which, by the way, the procedure is the same procedure you have if you have to have a DNC because you had a miscarriage. It's no different. It's a DNC. And it's just as brutal either way. But it tells in detail about the procedure. It does not pretend like, it was a bad choice or she regrets it. She doesn't. She knows it was what was best for her. And I find that incredibly inspiring. And I applaud her for putting that chapter in it and being so honest about it. And I think that, like I said, that's one of the most important chapters that's been written in a book in a really long fucking time. People need to hear it. People really need to hear that whole book. Like, it's really good. And it's straight up. And that is my review. Or lecture. On Caitlin Moran's How to Be a Woman. So, go to your library. If Columbus had it, and we have Kasich for a governor, I'm sure that, and yeah, I'm sure that y'all probably have it at your library. How to Be a Woman, Caitlin Moran. Go get it. Go read it. If you're a woman, you'll relate to this shit. If you're a man, you might understand your sister and your child and your old lady a little better. I love you guys, and I hope I still have subscribers after this. Oh, blessed be.